We have one item of public input. It is Sharon Byron Mackay, and I think Sharon is with, and Corin Sellers from they want to talk about continuation of Devonport's no spray policy. So ladies, if you would come forward to the seats, just straight opposite me here. There are 2 seats there, and there's a microphone which is self-activated. So you've got 5 minutes for your presentation, and there'll be a couple of questions from the councillors at the end of the presentation. So welcome, and we'd like to hear your presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Byron Mackay. I am the spokesperson for Devonport Toxic Action Group, and I work as a health professional. Devonport residents and ratepayers are concerned at the proposed change 5.5 of Unitary Plan Policy, that is to increase the use of chemicals and discontinue mechanical means for weed control in Devonport.
Sorry.
No, I'm just putting up a slide here.
No, we seem to have lost the slides.
Okay. Issues that need to be addressed. Inadequate public consultation process. Our community believes that there is a lack of public consultation on this issue and that a 10-year budget feedback form is inadequate. I believe the last consultation process carried out in this way resulted in very few replies from Devonport public. Silence is not an indication of agreement, support or disagreement, and should not be used in this way by Auckland Council to do as they like. Such an action as cutting mechanical weed control for budgetary gain cannot be successful if a key stakeholder, such as the community, is not closely worked with, especially if Auckland Council is seen not to be maximising the protection of public health of its good citizens and ratepayers. Second issue. Devonport has had a chemical-free policy for weed control for our parks and berms for 21 years. Devonport has brought into being chemical-free for weed control of our parks, berms and sports fields. And behest a chemical-free policy be included in the Unitary Council's long-term plan. Third issue to be addressed. Proposed public notification is not working because Council cannot notify all residents of exact dates and time that spraying is to take place due to practical limitations imposed by the weather. I refer you to Parks, Recreational and Heritage Forum 2013. But the general public needs to be notified of Council's intention to chemical spray. This leaves children vulnerable to unknowingly come across potentially toxic spray drift at parks, pathways, playground equipment, along walkways to school. This leading to acute exposure to glyphosate. Next issue, water contamination. Devonport has had a long history of good water quality. Glyphosate is emerging as a seabed sediment contaminant in Auckland beaches. I refer you to NIWA 2014. Will there be any follow-up with these findings? I think not, as there is no testing to date for glyphosate or no limits set. If glyphosate is sprayed in Devonport, we too could follow other Auckland beaches with seabed contamination. Storms or change of sea tides result in sediment movement. Since testing for glyphosate and seabed sediment is not carried out by council, without this we have absolutely no idea of changes in this build-up over time, whether it is happening slowly or quickly. Our children, in the meantime, are swimming at these beaches, quite possibly being exposed to glyphosate. Dr. Morgan, former PCE, in a letter to TAG in 2006, warns a precautionary approach is warranted in the use of herbicides by council, where there is a potential for substances to be washed into fresh coastal water systems. This is particularly the case where viable alternative options are available. Next issue, weed grass resistance to glyphosate. 2013 report by Massey University recommends removing the need of herbicide use in urban waste areas for weed control, as grasses are now resistant to glyphosate and will soon be to malciflorin. And surely this may not be just limited and restricted to waste areas. Is increasing glyphosate use not a losing battle for council, wasting taxpayers' money, and at the same time creating super weeds? Next issue, environment concerns voiced by Dr. Jan Wright, PCE. Comments to TAG in a letter dated 2009 in reference to the formation of the Unitary Council. I agree that it is important for councils to consider the environmental implications of pesticides in their daily activities, and that she hoped that any future policies that are adopted make good environmental management a priority. Failing to face the reality of pragmatic management for weed control for our city in their inherent physical, social and legal complexities will ensure future generations are left to deal with this legacy. On behalf of over 1,000 Devonport residents and ratepayers, we implore this committee to recommend to Auckland Council that further use of glyphosate should be banned for weed control, and that a more sustainable non-chemical method of weed control be used in our cities for our long-term plan and be enshrined in policy. Let's keep Auckland clean and green for future generations to enjoy for decades to come. I now invite...
No, sorry, I think you're up to 5 minutes now, so...
Oh, I understand that there's only one other person to talk and that there's a 30-minute slot.
Sorry, 5 minutes is the time that you have for your presentation.
We've put several hours of work into this presentation.
I'm sorry, but you were the person...
I'm happy to move an extension, Mr. Chair.
You were the person that made the application, and it's 5
But
minutes.
I was asked if another person. I asked if another person could speak, and that was agreed to.
Well, usually the submitter speaks for 5 minutes or less, and then we have questions.
I would be grateful if we could be heard out. It will only be a very brief.
Well,
will be only be
well,
very brief.
Okay, well, there'll be no questions then. I think that'll be the...
Oh, come on.
Oh, I mean, order. If so, you know, you did get the 5 minutes, and that was the time.
Point of order, Mr.
We're
Chairman.
up to 5 minutes now.
Point of order,
so-
Mr. Chairman.
I would be
Okay,
really grateful
we'll
if
let your
it will
let
be
the person speak, but that'll be
Point
very-
of
a
order,
very
Mr.
brief-
Chairman.
Point of order, councillor Casey.
there's been
What
an
is the point of order?
There's been an extension of time requested and seconded.
I don't think we need an extension of time. I will grant the person a very brief time. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Corinne Sellers. I'm studying for my PhD in microbiology at Auckland University. I'm studying the link between autism and the microbiome. I have a son who's autistic, has a lot of problems at school, and I know a lot of mothers who are also in my situation. There's no funding in New Zealand to help these children, and so we try to reduce pesticides, herbicides, and all forms of chemicals from our children's food. Things like glyphosate used in the environment, they can disrupt metabolic processes in animals. They can also cause dysbiosis in the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome is now being studied as something that can cause disease. Many of these chemicals actually disrupt the microbiome, producing chemicals like C. difficile and bacteria, which produce toxins, which disrupt melatonin that's formed in the brain that help with sleep. Many psychiatric disorders can be caused by putting chemicals like this into the environment. I beseech you, please, just think about this before you do it. This is our future generations. These are my children. Sorry, it's a very emotive subject for me. I feel that you must look at this before you do it. There are alternatives to these chemicals. If it gets into the groundwater, if it gets into the lakes, the streams, the beaches, what will happen then? It'll be too late. Thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. I just remind councillors that this matter is actually before the, it's contained within the proposed Auckland Unitary Plan, and that matter is now before the Unitary Plan Hearings Committee. So, and it's also within the long-term plan. So I just want to point that out. I'm just pointing that out to councillors. I will take 2 questions.
Point of clarification first.
Point of clarification.
Where is it covered off in the unitary plan? You mentioned that. I don't have any understanding of that. No. There is some mention, I think, in the long-term plan around a change to chemicals, but nothing in the unitary plan.
Sorry.
So there's a briefing provided that I have on this particular issue and how we're looking to address it in a joined-up fashion across council, Councillor Walker. And in the proposed unitary plan, it's looking to set standards for the use of herbicides, including the need to meet New Zealand standards through various operator requirements, etc. And therefore, if the unitary plan anticipates that if those standards are met, then that would be a mechanism for allowing the use on roads or parks, road reserves. So you do need to just double check the unitary plan, but that's the briefing note I've got in front of me. And then we all know that it's part of the long-term plan and one of the proposals before you, and that it's being dealt through that process as an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, have you got a question?
Sure, I wouldn't mind having that in black and white, just so I can get my head around it, because I don't recall too much in the unitary plan around the use of chemicals.
Okay, thank you.
So we can certainly provide that.
Certainly, thank you. I had a question.
Yes.
My understanding is that a chemical-free approach has been used in the Devonport-Takapuna area for quite some time. I can't remember how many years.
21 years.
21 years, yes.
Okay, and that approach has been cost-effective. Would just invite a response around that.
I understand that it's been extremely successful. It's been successful in maintaining weed control in the suburb, and I can only talk from our residents' point of view, and that is that they feel extremely happy with it and are extremely concerned that we will lose that right. And Devonport residents see it as their right. It was fought for 21 years ago, and it was behest by the residents of Devonport that we have a chemical-free policy.
And
Thank
further
you.
to that,
Councillor Watson?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on your comment about the absence of community consultation. There are areas beside Devonport, of course. There's the Albany ward, for instance, where the councillors and the local board are unanimous, both boards, in wanting chemical-free applications to be used. Do you think that, given that we know that there is options and that options are cost-effective, in fact, my understanding, Mr. Chairman, is that some applicators, biothermal, for instance, can do their chemical-free application cheaper than chemicals. So, that being the case, would you support this going out to the public as a whole for consultation, so the various wards, local board areas could decide what suits their communities best?
Absolutely, and I was under the understanding that during the formation of the Unitary Council that that was one of the promises, that local communities would retain their local democracy.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to move that we thank...
happy to second.
Receive the presentation, I can't read it now, from Sharon Byron Mackay and Corin Sellers with regard to the continuation of Devonport's no spray policy. Seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Darby.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to acknowledge the submitters. Very passionate, but also very well researched and evidenced. And, you know, Devonport, yes, it's my patch, you could say, but Devonport's led on a lot of environmental things, from challenging the government on nuclear to...
Sorry, point of order?
Is this a point of order?
What is your point of order, Councillor?
Well, I thought that, are we now going into a discussion on this?
No, well, we are going to a discussion. I don't think we can have a discussion, but Councillor Darby, being a local councillor, I think he wanted to say something, but I don't want, want it to be a long dissertation, please, Councillor Darby.
No, I'm acknowledging, there's a motion here to acknowledge the submitters,
Yes,
and that's what I'm speaking to.
I'm acknowledging. I don't want to get into the technical details.
These submitters.
Speaking to it.
And I'm acknowledging what goes before these submitters is the history of this community. In the nuclear area, in the recycling area, it led Auckland. And I'm saying, councillors, take note that this community and the wider community of the whole peninsula is leading on this issue as well. And I'll leave you with this note, that the hot water contractor in that area that worked this concept up of hot water control has been dismissed by Auckland Transport, even when it has passed all its audit reports.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, did you...
Just, Mr Chairman, given this is a policy committee, the weed management policy and Objective 3 talks about minimising agrochemical use and for CCOs to do their very best to provide innovation. I mean, maybe, is it timely, Mr Chairman, to either have a look at that again or at least have...
No, I think,
Councillor
Cooper,
send something to us, that's all.
You've already been told that this is being looked at in the unitary plan, proposed unitary plan, and it is also being looked at in the long-term plan, or the draft long-term plan. So I don't want to, I'm not going to have a discussion here on the merits or have anything flowing on from this presentation, which is the rules we usually have, that presentations are received and we don't get into a debate on the merits or otherwise of the issue.
I wasn't debating the merits.
So what we're doing here now is just thanking the presenters for their presentation. Councillors have heard the information. Councillors will be supplied with a copy of what Mr Kimpton has alluded to when he spoke to Councillor Walker.
Thank you.
I think that is as far as we can take the matter at this stage. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Yes?
Yeah. I wonder if it would be, because there seems to be some confusion, and I'm glad that the submitters have raised this issue, because the standing orders can be a little bit confusing, and it's up to council officials when people make a request for a public presentation, that they're very clear on what the standing orders say. And, you know, you can be, and I think that the submitters were confused by the fact that they thought that 30 minutes maximum was for their presentation, when in fact each presentation is just for 5 minutes. And, you know, council officials need to tell the presenters that, because otherwise it does become confusing, and also it's not fair on the presenters, who go to a lot of trouble in many cases to make a presentation and then find, well, hang on, instead of the 30 minutes that we thought we had, we've actually only got 5 minutes. So I think it's really, it's behoven on our officials to make sure that that's clear.
Okay, well, Mr. Kimpton can answer that.
So look, Councillor Quacks, thank you for that. The important point is we always look to make it as very clear as we can. We believe in this instance we have a 30-minute slot for public input, up to 5 minutes for each. If we need to make that clearer, then we will make that clearer. It is our understanding that was clearly communicated in this instance, but maybe it's misunderstood. Okay. We'll endeavour to do that more clearly in future. Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, thank you very much for coming in and making the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Fletcher. So we now move to local board input, the item there, and there is no local board input. So we now move to extraordinary business, and I'm not aware of any extraordinary business. No notices of motion. So we now move to item 9, which is Comet, and they wish to make a presentation here this morning on their draft language strategy, the Comet being CCO of Auckland Council. Representative Comet here? Yes. Yeah. So if you would introduce the people who are with you here this morning. Thank you. Susan.
Ko haua uru rauri tōku ingoa. My name is Hau.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Susan Warren, I'm from Comet Auckland. We're here representing the Auckland Languages Strategy Working Group, which Comet Auckland established and has been working to coordinate over the past, I don't know, year and a half or so. And with us in the background, because there aren't enough chairs.
Oh, no, they can come up. They can come up.
Come and
Yeah, yeah.
bring chairs. So we have Charlie Hayward from English Language Partners, Jeff Johnson from Asia, New Zealand, John Caffrey from University of Auckland, Faculty of Education, Judy McCaffrey from Auckland University Library, is that us? And Ho and I. And I'm hoping that someone's got our presentation. I did email it. Yeah. I'm just...
It will come up. There it is there. Is that the presentation?
No, that's not the presentation. Have the presentation that I emailed?
We just got to look for it then. Thank you. Sorry about this. Hey.
Where do I need to take it? Yep. We'll start.
Yes,
and,
if you start. Yes, thank you.
Tēnā tātou katoa. Tēnā koutou aku rangatira. Tāmiki makaurau, tāmiki here here o ngā waka katoa. Tēnei mātou ka mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Te oro o te reo, te oro o te iwi, te oro o tāmiki makaurau. Simple message, the well-being of our languages contributes to the well-being of our people, contributes to the well-being of tāmaki makaurau. Nō reira ngā mihi nei ki a koutou, tēnei ka whakapuarihia, tēnei tā mātou whakaaturaka.
So thanks to the technical experts for getting our submission, our presentation on the screen. So this is a presentation from the Auckland Languages Strategy Working Group. Just want to outline very briefly why did we do this work for the past couple of years to develop a languages strategy. You'll be aware that Auckland is really different from the rest of the country. We are much more diverse, and linguistic diversity is one of the key features. So over 160 languages, 39% of people born overseas, many of them bring a first language that could be a resource to this city. At the moment, we're largely ignoring that resource. Many migrants lose their language within the first 2 generations, often faster, and yet they could be a resource for trade, for tourism, for social cohesion, for learning in our city. We also have the world's largest Māori and Pacific populations, again a huge resource, again many with their first language strong, and many others who are losing their language need support to maintain them as a resource for the city. And a quarter Asian, growing really rapidly, and you'll have seen in the census figures that Hindi is now the 3rd largest language in Auckland. And in many areas, the 2nd, 3rd and 4th languages in, for example, Howick are various forms of Chinese. So we have a really diverse city. Languages have value economically for trade and tourism. There's also really good evidence for social value, social cohesion, cultural understanding within a community, particularly when people are able to learn each other's language, at least greet each other in their languages. And then educational, and you know, this is my interest, really strong evidence that if you're bilingual and multilingual, then you have cognitive gains, and it also becomes easier to learn more languages. But as I say, this resource is at risk. So the census shows us the number of speakers of Te Reo Māori who can actually hold a conversation is declining, and that this is the only country where this language is spoken. This is urgent, that we need to reverse that. Several Pacifica languages are at risk, and again, many of them, majority of the population here in Auckland. And migrant language loss, as I referred to before. So this is now something we need to focus more on. So realising that about 2 years ago, we brought together gradually over time a cross-sector group of multiple language interest groups, and we've had people as diverse as Alliance Française and Deaf Aotearoa and Multicultural New Zealand and Community Languages Association New Zealand, several representatives from various departments within council. Libraries have been very strongly contributing. So a very broad cross-sector group bringing various interests of languages together. And informed by expertise from the Royal Society paper, Languages in Aotearoa, which has authoritative research on languages here. And we've gone out quite widely with a first draft of the strategy late last year and early this year. And that went out, we've had 18 different organisations contribute to back from that, but it went out far more widely than that, and so it's had exposure across everyone we can all collectively think of in languages, plus various newsletters. So we hope to have a final working draft soon. What we wanted to do is come and talk to you now to let you know that this is happening, and to start exploring what council might be able to do to support languages in the city. So the vision is a multilingual Auckland, and benefiting from the social, cultural and economic value of increasing the number of Aucklanders who speak more than one language. Building from the base we have, and the platform for all of this is Te Reo Māori, our Indigenous language and taonga for all of us, and building from that to support all the languages of Tāmaki Makaurau. And the strategy and you've had a copy of the draft strategy, so you can see the actions and goals that we're proposing. But basically it's about 4 things. It's about valuing all the languages spoken in Tamaki Makaurau, maintaining languages, so using the resource of people who already come with a language other than English and making sure they can maintain it as a resource for the city. Opportunities for people to learn each other's languages, and making sure we use the languages, because you only maintain and learn a language if you can use it frequently. You should be able to go to your corner store and buy a loaf of bread in Te Reo Māori. This is our national language. Why can't you? So what are we asking of Auckland Council? We would like you to consider affirming the strategy, and you may wish to wordsmith that in terms of what word you might use. We would love to include in a companion document all the things that Auckland Council are already doing to support languages, alongside recognising all the things that other people in the city are doing to support languages. It's a really good way to get recognition for what council are doing, and it helps people coordinate and see the things that are happening. We'd like you to consider some additional actions that we've included in the strategy, and probably the key one is around establishing an advisory panel with some admin support to pull together all the things that are happening to support language, because the thing we haven't got is coherence, and what that means is you get gaps and you get double ups that we could avoid if there was some kind of coordinating office. And when the strategy is finished, we would like you to consider adopting the strategy and or developing an Auckland Council policy for languages building from the strategy. So that's the overview from me. I'd just like to give the others a minute or so each to add their viewpoint, because as you will have heard, they all come from quite different angles around this.
Shall I say? Yeah. Hi, so Jeff Johnson, Education Director at the Asian New Zealand Foundation. We're about equipping our young people to thrive in their future, and their future, their future will have a profound effect on them, obviously, with the rapid rise of the middle class in Asia and the change in demographics in Auckland. So for a 5-year-old starting in an Auckland school right now, by the time they get to the enter the workforce in around about 2030, the middle class in Asia would have grown from about 500 million to 3 billion middle class Asian consumers. 60% of the world's middle class will be in the Asia Pacific area. In addition to that, the demographics in Auckland will change. The Asian population will grow from about 1/4 to about 1/3 of all Aucklanders will be of Asian descent. And so we believe that those that have an Asian language will have a huge advantage, and they'll advantage Auckland as well. We've been very pleased to share the vision of a multilingual Auckland. We're happy to be part of this group because we have a strong belief that all languages should be promoted, particularly Te Reo, for a number of reasons. If you're going to be culturally competent, then you need to have your own identity, your own culture, and your own language, and you have to have that strong, and you'll have a propensity to learn other languages as well. And I'd urge you to look at this very carefully, because I think it will benefit our young hugely for their careers and their social lives, and in doing so benefit Auckland in a range of areas as well. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko rangatira koutou kana ko hui mai nei, ai tēnei rā whātalo whātu e te autau I lēnei tai au matango whia. I just wanted to say, from the education point of view, we have the buy-in from all of the educational institutions in the tertiary sector to support such a strategy. The educational value of bilingualism and of knowing another language is really well established, and there's a significant amount of work happening in the city on that, including a number of conferences this year and over previous years. And that really the research is showing that the languages have to exist in the civic domain, not just in the family domain, if they are to be seen to be valued by society. So it's not hard to value languages in the civic domain, but that is the measure that the research is saying will need to happen if the languages that our communities hold are going to not just survive, but thrive and be available as a valuable resource for the city. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Charlie Hayward from English Language Partners New Zealand Trust. We're an NGO that teaches New Zealanders of migrant and refugee backgrounds English so that they can settle successfully in New Zealand and can participate and contribute socially and economically. We don't teach international students. Our focus is on teaching English to domestic students only. So we're interested in the English language provision, which is the demand is far higher than the supply, but also we're interested in the heritage language of these groups. It's through their own languages that they interpret and understand their own culture, values, and identity. So our focus is on provision of English language, maintaining heritage language within the wider context of a coordinated languages strategy for Auckland.
So that's our presentation. Over to questions.
Thank you. I've got a question from Councillor Filipina, Cooper, and Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Chair, my question is around, obviously, what they're asking of Auckland Council. Where do we go from here, if in fact we go anywhere with the strategy that's been developed? So the question through you, Chair, is maybe at Dean and Roger around where we go from here. That's the initial one.
Okay, well...
through you, Mr Chair. So, as councillors will be aware, you've given a clear direction to us as officers that we're into the business of action rather than developing more strategies, and we've taken that very seriously. So we would be very happy to look at the draft strategy and look at what actions might come out of that. The other factor is that Te Waka Angamua are developing a te reo policy for the council, and so I think it would be appropriate to refer the draft strategy to Te Waka Angamua in terms of the recommendations that come out of that. So just acknowledging the point that the team making is New Zealand has two official languages, English and te reo, and so affirming the point that they're making in the strategy. Kia ora.
Chair, just to comment on that, I mean, with all due respect to Waka Angamua, who are developing the te reo strategy, I mean, I don't think Te Waka Angamua is the space where this particular one, when we're looking at a multilingual strategy that's put in place. Yes, that's around te reo, and that's our Māori unit, but I think it needs, Roger, through you, Chair, to be across the Auckland Council unit. So that's what I'm. It's not about te reo, and obviously you've read the agenda, but it's not about just te reo. It's around the other languages. Cook Island is mentioned in there, and also Niue. So that's just my comment to that, Roger.
Well, through you, Mr Chair, yes, I know that it's not just about te reo. I was really picking up on the point that the team were making about the importance of te reo. So what I said was that as officers we'd be happy to look at the draft strategy and see what actions might be able to come out of that, which would go right across the range of languages that the team have got in the draft strategy.
And Chair, I just got one, just two comments. One, I attended the launch of the ASB Polyfest at the ASB Cube, and there were several schools there. And the languages spoken even at that launch basically indicates exactly what's been said here. So we need to look at that. I also wanted to acknowledge yesterday, through you, Chair, the Ngāti Paua 175th signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. That was yesterday. And through Hau and myself, I attended on behalf of Council on Sunday at Karaka Bay in St Heliers, where the signing took place, hence the T-shirt that I'm wearing. So I just want to acknowledge Hau to you, ngā mihi kia koe, and also to your whānau. So, Chair, this one here, there's been 2 years nearly on this, and I just want to make sure we don't end up putting it, and I'm not saying it will, no. I just don't want that to be put on the back shelf and sort of say, hey, you know, look, thank you very much in doing it, because the benefits that have been outlined here are well known, And I think we need to grasp that and carry on. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I mean, really very pertinent in our growing multicultural region. Just want to talk about where this sits, and I guess as a CCO of council, you understand you need to deliver to the Auckland plan. Where do you see this fitting in that? Because it doesn't say that in here, and I mean, I'd say that, yeah, first that's the question, but we need to make sure that we're just not making policies that don't fit into that strand, and if it already fits somewhere, that's great, but I'd you know, wonder where you see, where does it fit and which part of the Auckland plan does it deliver on, and which current policies might it already slot into or reflect what you're doing, reflect the policy we already have?
So it does, there is a section on where...
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at this.
In the back of the strategy, links to related policies and plans, and on page 11 and 12 of the strategy. So there are very strong links with the Auckland plan, with the Arts and Culture Strategic Action Plan, Children and Young Persons Plan, clearly, the Māori Plan for Tamaki Makaurau, and the Economic Development Strategy. So there, it's very clear links.
So you don't think we need to make another policy? Just that
it's a really
can be
good
supported
question.
by across a tranche of policies we've already got?
So these are plans rather than policies,
They come
aren't
out
they?
of policies,
So it's,
yeah.
I wouldn't have said that we did. However, I know talking to council officers, they have been saying perhaps we should look at a policy. What we want to see is a national policy for languages, actually. And I think Auckland Council could show the way in that by creating a policy. So from that point of view, there could be a really valuable advocacy role for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I'm just picking up on one of the key issues you've identified here in the draft strategic action plan. That's to do with language teaching. I'm just, it makes the, you know, the very pertinent observation here that in many cases really languages are declining in schools. So I'm just wondering what communication or what research of the Ministry of Education or the Education Department, whomsoever, you've been able to draw upon, because it would seem to me not only declining, but in some subjects, the people actually doing it are native speakers, say like Japanese or even a high percentage of Korean people. So I suggest the figures are actually even worse than they might appear if you take the kind of traditional New Zealand student. And if you have communicated with the ministry, to what extent is that decline linked to the fact that the languages are often appear to be a lot more difficult for students to do, and the standard demanded, comparable to other subjects, is appreciably higher. So,
can I answer
have they said that?
I see you jumping.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I used to be a principal here in Auckland at Willow Park School, 650 kids. We had weekly Mandarin lessons for all our year 3, 4, 5 and 6. It's 400 kids. It's possible, it's not in a too hard basket. Don't put it there. Okay, this is all possible. At the moment, the government's put $10 million of contestable funding towards Asian language learning in schools, and going through a process at the moment supporting schools doing that. This is against a 27% drop in Asian language learning in the last 10 years in secondary schools. Now, I'm talking about Asian languages, but across the board, we're in a bad state with languages. We're going backwards when, in fact, all those reasons up there, we should be going forward. So don't put it in a too hard basket. It is possible, it can be done, and we need your support.
I guess what the point I was getting at is when students get to year 10, 11, 12 and 13, it inevitably declines, and if you look at the standard required to pass language exams in Japanese and other subjects is actually at a lot higher level than the other subjects people do. So one would make the assumption then that part of the reason why it's declining is because the subjects are really difficult when you get to that senior part of secondary school.
Yeah, that is perceived difficulty is probably one factor. More is a shortage of teachers with fluency and teaching skills. But the worst issue is we don't have enough language teaching at primary and intermediate level, which is actually where your brain learns language most effectively. Yeah. Languages don't become compulsory till secondary, and even then it's often a little bit of German and a little bit of Japanese and a little bit of whatever else, and kids cherry pick, which means they get to year 11 and they haven't got enough of any one language to be able to engage with NCEA. So I think it's a structural issue is the main thing.
And when they do engage with NCA, then the difficulty makes them then not pursue it.
Because they don't have that background.
Wow.
Perhaps I could just add to that, there is actually no policy supporting the learning or teaching of languages other than Te Reo in the primary school system until year 7, and consequently starting languages at year 7 is an unrealistic expectation. So we have this structural problem with the ministry about that, and there are significant debates going on. However, the research from Professor Stephen May indicates that the reasons that many young people don't take up languages is that they're not seen in the civic domain. They're not seen outside their family or church or community group. So if the wider society doesn't signal that the languages are important or significant, kids think, oh, well, it's just mum and dad and the old fogies who speak it. So that's why Professor May is saying if we want children to learn languages, if we want to make them significant in our society, the civic domain has to give signals to young people in schools that this is a valued thing to do. And in those circumstances, there are no difficulty in the secondary schools with dealing with Asian or other languages if they can be strengthened in the primary school system, which Jeff's system in Asia New Zealand Foundation is doing amazing experimental work with a large number of schools in that area.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you. And Susan, a very thoughtful presentation, and you've certainly got us all thinking very hard about it. Can I ask my question to you in the context of someone who really does appreciate the importance of language diversity, and as the Auckland legacy, the person who secured Auckland City's support for the Lantern Festival and Pacifica. My concern is that we too often let government off the hook, and Auckland Council is coming in and financially bailing out so many projects at a time where we can't even deliver on some of our own commitments within the Auckland plan on issues as boring as infrastructure. So how do you see this sitting? I mean, I'm really, really keen to support you, but I'm not keen to see us get into yet more financial commitments that we are going to be unable to meet. So I'd really like your reflections on what you can do in partnership with us, but putting the financial responsibility on central government where it should reside.
Yes, I think that if you look at the actions in the strategy, most of them are actually for government and or community, but there's an advocacy role that all of us need to take to be saying to government, this is a resource and we expect you to be spending some of our taxpayer money on it because it's important for the country. And I think that the actions that are in the strategy for council, many of them are things council are already doing, and they're things that can be done within the normal way of working of council. So, for example, bilingual signage is a really simple thing. It's not about going out and replacing all the signs in the city tomorrow. It's about, as things need replacing, choosing to do so bilingually, potentially at almost zero cost. So it's more that kind of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
I was very interested, Susan, to hear you say that there was a companion paper coming which would outline everything that Auckland Council's doing. I think they probably need to come together so that people see the real value in that. Can you tell me a bit more about that work and when we can expect it?
So what we're aiming for is not something just that says what Auckland Council is doing, but all the things that are happening to support languages in the city. And we sent out a survey-ish thing late last year, and we've got some input from some organisations, and we're aware we're going to need to really be much more proactive about getting the information. And the goal is that that would be available on a website, that people can go and see if I want support for X or Y, or if I want to know what's happening in Z, then I can look at this table on a website and see the various things that are happening. And I know that Auckland libraries have populated their part of that table, and it's already incredibly a lot of things. So it's about pulling all of those things together, which is one thing we would really like to ask support for from this group, that perhaps you could be asking council officers to be feeding back to us the things that are happening.
Okay. My other thought was simply that the civic engagement is absolutely critical to this council, and we've just proved recently that we haven't had good civic engagement with our migrant, refugee, Pacifica and Maori communities. And so there's got to be learnings for us in this. And my last question was just to ask you if you'd gone to the Pacific Peoples Panel, the Disability Strategic Advisory Group and the Ethnic Peoples Panel with it, just to get feedback.
So those are all the next stage, and yes, we will be. And the IMSB. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions for the officials, if I may. Either Dean's gone, so Roger, you may be able to answer this, but what obligations does the council have in regard to the encouragement or promotion of te reo, or given that as one of the 3 official languages, do we have any obligations to encourage or promote the language?
Well, I wouldn't say it's spelled out in the legislation, but certainly the legislation establishes it is, as you say, one of the 3 official languages of New Zealand. But we have, as a council, we've undertaken an obligation to promote te reo, for example. Just to give you an example of that, well, that's what the Te Waka Angamua group is promoting, the use and learning of te reo throughout the council organisation, is practice we're already doing. Also, we celebrate language diversity through supporting Māori and Pacifica Language Week. So, internally within the organisation, we actively promote it in those sort of means.
And in terms of working on developing an Auckland languages strategy, what would be the resources required for that? And Councillor Fletcher has touched on that, but are we aware of what kind of resources we would require, or do Common have their own resources to follow up on the strategy?
So, I think the situation is Comet has put its resources into developing the draft strategy, and they're now asking whether we would, or the council would be prepared to endorse that. So, but to do that, we'd have to review that strategy and give you advice back on what the resource implications might be. So, and the general principle that we're following here is you've told us you want us to get on with action, not more strategies. And so, but I can maybe illustrate to you that we already have in place Auckland Council communication guidelines, which encourage council departments to communicate with Aucklanders in a range of formats and languages to help ensure all communications are accessible. So we already have those sort of measures in place. It is aligned to Chapter 2 of the Auckland Plan about the People chapter, which points out we're amongst the most diverse, culturally, ethnically diverse cities in the world, and that we celebrate that diversity and we encourage the languages of that multi-ethnic community. So I think there's a lot already in place that but what I'm suggesting we do is we have a good look at the draft strategy when it comes out and see if there's more actions that might be built into existing mechanisms.
And your officials will supply us with a report to cover all those issues?
Yes, we'll do that. Yes.
Including costs?
Definitely costs.
Yes.
Councillor and I.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a strong supporter of this, and picking up on what Councillor Fletcher had said, It's really central government's responsibilities. COMET is our CCO who's putting together a policy and strategy for us to deliver this and looking for our support so government can give them the support to deliver this. I mean, I think New Zealand has actually failed a lot as far as languages are concerned. Just remember, each year we bring into New Zealand thousands of students internationally to learn English. What are we doing about teaching our students to learn the languages of the world today? And for those who do business in China and those who are now studying Chinese in Auckland, they're the lucky ones of the future because the doors are going to be wide open for them. And so what you're telling us here, we should be thinking strongly about opening that door wider and getting more of our young people to master these languages, especially of where the business is going to happen tomorrow. And so my concern is we know that the budget for COMET has been cut quite tragically, and how are we going to be able to get this going? I think they're wanting our endorsement to be able to go to government with cap in hand and say, look, we've got the endorsement of council and we need to deliver this. And just as a side, I want to tell you this, Samoan government itself sends 60 students to China per year to learn Chinese. That's what they're doing, because they realise that the business between those two places are growing and there's a need to master it. Having travelled many times up there on the business side of things, language is essential in these countries to make things happen. So I strongly support what they're trying to do and ask you all to endorse what they're trying to achieve because it's important for the future of New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the first question I want to ask is what traction you are having with MOE, because I'll just go with the Reo strategy at the moment. There are only 2 places in New Zealand plus a private training institution in the area, basically Waikato University, Auckland, and the private institution that are teaching, that are bringing through teachers. So if we can hardly get that traction in this big area, how are we going to get that traction with Polynesian, Hindi, Chinese, Mandarin, etc.?
Yes, we are constantly talking about this with the Ministry of Education. We need it to be addressed at 2 levels. So we need to be addressing it at the policy level. And Te Reo Māori is the one area where government can support, recognises they need to support and need to be pushed further to support properly. And the current push from government to develop a strategy for Te Reo Māori is an opportunity for that. There's also the on-the-ground work that we can do maybe despite government, and the example that Jeff gave of the schools working on Asian languages, that model is now being used for Te Reo Māori as well, and it's a community-based model that gets around the issue that we don't have enough of a supply of qualified teachers. So happy to talk with you further about that.
And the second question is, I mean, we dropped the ball once before in New Zealand regarding languages. New Zealand was settled by Chinese, French, German, but somehow English came through as being the #1 language. Are you certain that by developing the strategy we can do that again, we can stop that again? Because one of the things that used to always amaze me was my Dutch friends, when they went back to Holland, said that, went back to the Netherlands, they said they were getting ripped off because people could tell their accent straight away. And they spoke with a Dutch with a New Zealand accent, and they were getting ripped off all the time. So, I mean, how are we going to kind of get over that thing again where that happens?
So this is just a strategy, and I don't think it's going to perform miracles is probably the answer. But it's a start. And what we need is a national languages policy. And as Councillor Anai said, one of the things we need to get that to happen is for government to pay attention and to have Auckland Council say, languages are important to us. We're adopting a strategy to work on that. Has a communication value for government that then might have a greater effect. So I think there's so much we can do in Auckland, and by bringing our efforts together we can make a difference. As Jeff says, we can't give up hope, we haven't, and we need government to step up, which is why we're asking for endorsement.
And the final question relates to this strategy, from an IMSB point of view, we would be looking at this strategy to complement the Reo strategy, not to pull from it in such a way. I mean, there's synergies there, but I suppose that's the question. Are you sure that you can that we can go with this strategy and not pull from the focus of the Reo?
Tēnā koe te rangatira. No, it's about enhancing all languages. Te reo Māori is the foundation in terms of the strategy for the Auckland Languages Strategy Group, so that other language can grow. In terms of our engagement with the Tāmaki Makaurau Education Forum that was mooted in 2010 by the IMSB and presently driven by Commonwealth Auckland, well, they've also supported this the working together of this particular strategy. But more importantly is that te reo revitalisation is one of the key priorities for Māori of Auckland. The other thing is that I just wanted to add in terms of your first question was around engaging and looking forward in terms of the new regime around the te reo strategy group being Te Mātāwai. We presented, we recognised that was really, really important and presented 2 days ago on Tuesday to the Select Committee, and basically the principle is that te reo Māori is the foundation for all other languages to grow. If te reo Māori is nurtured and well, it helps to assist all other languages to grow as well.
Could I just add to that too, if possible? It's a critical situation. We've got kids coming into our school system multilingual and leaving monolingual. And we've got dropping numbers of te reo in mainstream schools. The strength of this is learning from each other and supporting. And models that are in one language can be used in other languages. For instance, the Mandarin Language Assistant model, which from the Confucius Institute, has been picked up by Te Reo Tuatahi here in Auckland, and they're rolling out Māori language assistants to 35 schools. So by working together, we learn from each other, we support each other, and all boats rise with the incoming tide.
Thank you. No other question? Councillor Cashmore.
Yeah, very brief, Mr Chairman. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. My interest is in the development of this strategy. From what I've read in here, you haven't actually identified what Auckland Council already does in its language work and its diversity to any great depth. Is that a deliberate management tool you've taken, not to identify those, or do you see that as coming as part of the foundation work for the action points?
So, as I said, there's a companion document that we are working on that will bring together the things that are already happening. And many of them are reflected in the actions, so they're listed as actions that need to happen. Some of them are already happening. But the companion document is where there will be an opportunity to show all the different things that are happening. There is a lot happening, but what we can see from the data and the census is what's happening isn't doing enough right now.
Thank you.
Right, with that, I'm going to move that the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee thank Comet and presenters of the Auckland Languages Strategy Group for their presentation and acknowledge the value of their work in developing an Auckland languages strategy. Request staff to work with Comet and identify actions that could come out of the strategy.
Second.
Second by Councillor Philippines, indicated you've seconded it.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. So, is there any discussion?
Good.
No. I'll put the motion then. Oh, sorry, Councillor. Yeah. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? I declare that carried. Mr. Wilcox, thank you.
Me ana kia koutou e kawe mai te kōrero mo te reo. I roto i te reo, te wairua me te hononga ki te awairua o te tangata. No reira tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Haha ko te reo. No wiwi, no wawa, hei aha. Ko te mea nui, te wairua o te ngākau. Tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you. So we now move, councillors, to item 10, and we have presenters here for this item. I just want to give some background to this item. This item stemmed from a request from the Manurewa Local Board, who are asking us to bring forward the review of the District Licensing Committee structure that we have at the present time. They were indicating they wanted to come here today. They have spoken to me and they have spoken to other people. But the officers have put together a report, and I think we'd listen to the officers.
I probably need to declare an interest, I guess, because I'm
You can
part of
declare
a
an
group
interest.
that
I don't
sells
think you have
liquor.
to leave the room, though.
No, you don't need to.
Councillor.
Yeah, but the vote, I mean, in terms of the vote,
Oh, okay, well, you
I'm just a bit concerned. I won't, I'll just,
No,
no discussion, no
Okay.
vote.
So we'll now ask the officers if you can, as a presentation of what's in the report and the salient matters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You will remember that last year when you made the decisions around establishing the district licensing committees, that we made the decision, you made the decision that there would be a review after 1 year. We came back to you in December asking for a delay for this review, in particular to allow all the work on the local alcohol policy to proceed and to be completed before we conduct the review. In parallel, in January 2015, the Manurewa Local Board passed a resolution asking that this committee reconsider that decision and actually that the the review be brought forward. So basically what we're doing today is put this recommendation in front of you for this decision. Our advice as staff is that we proceed with the decision that you made in December and that we complete the review by May or June, because it will give time for the local alcohol policy work to be completed, and will give us more time to give you an informed recommendations on the structure of the DLCs.
Thank you. That's the presentation. Are there any questions? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Councillor Casey and then Councillor Cashmore.
What prompted the Manurewa board to ask for this?
Casey.
So the recommendation of the Manurewa Local Board was to request that this committee considers bringing the recommendation forward. So we're basically giving effect to
No,
their request.
but what prompted, why are they asking for it? What's their need?
Through the chair, I can't speak for the local board, but my indications from speaking to the acting local board chair is they just want to see some action on this review. They have some concerns about, I guess, the best way for community views to be incorporated into alcohol licensing decisions, and this is one component where we can look into that. Part of the review, however, is actually looking at the wider implications, not just the district licensing committee structure in terms of the hearings and the actual decision-making process, but how those decisions are made from start to finish as well. That's my indication of.
Was it prompted by any specific incidents in Manurewa?
Not that I'm aware of, but there are 2 current and recent alcohol licence applications that they have objected to, so it is possible, but I can't say for certain.
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody here from the board today?
No, they decided in the last, or not to come after we put the item on, so. Any other, sorry, Councillor Cashmore.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the report, Marguerite. And I understand the frustration that the Manurewa Local Board is having with their views on alcohol outlets in their area. Many of those views are replicated around other areas of Auckland. However, the local alcohol policy is in the throes of going through this council, and deliberations will be starting at the end of this month and will be concluding by the end of the month. That policy is going to give an overarching framework from which this council can then make informed decisions. The local alcohol policy is a very complicated piece of work. There's many moving parts and many levers and many interdependencies. It would be preemptive to agree with what the Manurewa Local Board's asking, no matter how much sympathy we have for it, because that LAP will inform a lot of the district licensing commissioning work and help come to a far better review process and hopefully a far better outcome from that review process. So I strongly support these recommendations. We need to do this job with thoroughness, but also be cautionary and careful that we don't preempt anything that may have repercussions later on because it has been rushed. So I strongly support that we let the local alcohol policy be done first, discuss that, the council adopt it, and then do the DLC review, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crum?
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I echo Councillor Cashmore's thoughts on letting the LAP process take its place. I too am a fellow colleague on that particular panel, and it's been a very fulsome body of work, and it still is. So we've got a ways to go on that. I just had a question for staff in regards to, in the executive summary in points 4 and 5, is what the local boards seem to be asking for in terms of the scope of the review lining up with what you think the scope of the review will be, particularly where they say that they'd like the review to include feedback from everyone. And you've mentioned in point 5, wide range of stakeholders, police, medical officer, health, local boards, objectors, applicants. So on timing aside, is that particular point lining up between what you're suggesting for the scope and what they're looking for?
Yes, through the chair, very much so. It was always our intention to speak with all of the stakeholders that the local board named in their resolution. So, in my view, it is very much in alignment with what we are already planning to do.
Sorry? Councillor? No. Okay, well, there's no other. Mr Wilcox, sorry.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but a review of the DLC doesn't mean a review of the decisions. Am I correct? That the decisions are reviewed by ALA, not by us?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to move the recommendation.
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Cashmore. Is there any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you, officers. Much appreciated. Thank you. We now move to item 11, which is the Strategy and Policy Forward Program Update. So we have Ruth and Denise. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. My name's Ruth Keeling and I'm from the Strategic Advice Unit, and I'm here to present an update on the Strategy and Policy Forward Program. So just a quick recap. This revised Strategy and Policy Forward Program was adopted by the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee in December last year. The overview of the revised program is set out in Attachment A, and it's also up on the screen there. There are 21 items in total, 9 in development and 12 that are being implemented. The program sits within the context of the Council's overall strategic framework, which includes other key documents such as the Auckland Plan, the proposed Auckland Unitary Plan and the long-term plan. The purpose of the Strategy and Policy Forward Program Update Report is to provide an overview of the program as a whole. Detailed progress information on individual items on the program is reported through local boards and relevant committees as usual throughout the year. To ensure that the reporting fits the new revised program, there has been some changes to the approach of this report. We hope that you find this report more useful, and we welcome your feedback on this at the end. Firstly, as agreed in December, we will now be reporting to you 3 times a year in March, July and November. The progress updates, which can be found in Attachment B, are future focused and outline key dates and decisions on the horizon for elected members. Items on the program are grouped by Auckland Plan outcomes. This is to improve alignment with the Auckland Plan implementation update, which also uses this format. And the report also identifies key strategic issues and themes which may impact on items on the program. For example, in this report, we've highlighted the potential impact of the RMA reform announcements on the Natural Hazards Risk Management Action Plan and the Environmental Strategic Action Plan. So in terms of progress to give you an update. Since December, there have been 3 items adopted. That's the community grants policy, the significance and engagement policy, and the commercial sex industry policy. In the next 3 months, 3 more items will be brought to elected members for the consideration of adoption, and that's the Arts and Cultural Strategic Action Plan Part 2, which is an implementation plan, the psychoactive substances local approved policy, and the local alcohol policy, which is timing, of course, subject to appeals. The last point that I'll raise is that reports on the implementation of individual items on the program currently come to committees and forums at different times of the year, and that we're currently looking into ways to align these reports to provide a more integrated reporting approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, very comprehensive way of setting it out, and succinctly indicates as to how progress is going, and we can see pretty clearly what the strategies that are still being worked on and those that have been completed are. So as Dr. Blakely indicated, we certainly don't want to get into more development strategies. So councillors, if you've got any questions, or Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, my obviously key issue is the Housing Strategic Action Plan, and where, you know, there's fantastic stuff happening in that area, and I want to thank the staff who are involved. But the way we're sort of looking at it is we've done, you know, some of the actions. The reality, though, of this plan is there's still quite a lot to do, and I'm just wondering, and we've added more complexity. You know, we've got the housing accord, we've got the construction of the new CCO. Can we just, maybe without adding anything too complicated in there, just note that we need to sort of review this. It isn't sort of a done deal, ticked off and done. It's a bit of an iterative process, so we need to take what we've got, have another look at it, sort of reshape to include some of the new complexities.
So could I just pick up that, Mr. Chairman, just so I understand what the Deputy Mayor is asking. So you'll see on this diagram on page 39, under the Strategy and Policy Implementation Program, that's at the bottom half of the green box there, we've got the Housing Strategic Action Plan is there, and that's under the category of, so the question that's asked above is, does this item require ongoing decisions and or input and oversight from elected members? And so we've said in that case, yes. Housing Strategic Action Plan does require ongoing oversight. We recognise this is a developing and evolving and highly high-profile area that we think does require your ongoing political direction to us, so that's why we've got it in that category. Okay. Does that answer your question?
As always, Dr. Blakely, that's a great answer, because we just need to be really clear that it's kind of like a work in process,
yes.
You know, it's kind of under construction, that we're not going to go, right, that's good, we've implemented that, tick off, done.
Yes, that's right.
It's open to ongoing work.
Yes, it is.
Brilliant.
Yes. Councillor Webster.
Oh, yes, thank you. This is great, actually. So under the significance and engagement policy, I know it became effective in December, but as we were talking about on the way over, Denise, are we going to review how the LTP, you know, drop-in sessions and things have gone with regards to maybe looking again at revising that policy? Through the numbers and what have you.
Through the chair, I'm not involved in that organising that process, but I assume there would be a plan in place to review how the Have Your Say events have gone and whether any consideration needs to be given to the policy, the significance and engagement policy.
It's sort of a little bit like the housing one, I suppose. It's sort of, although we tick these policies off, there are times when we probably have to review how we do things. That makes sense?
So, look, I think it's an agreed principle. Policy needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. So the answer is yes, and we build that into our program.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you. So you refer to the Auckland Plan and the Maori Responsiveness Framework, but the Maori Responsiveness Framework is a Treaty of Waitangi High Level process. I'm just looking at your attachment B here. The strategies and the structured analysis, I'm struggling to see, besides the National Policy Statement on freshwater, that management program, how these other programs would be bringing forward that Maori outcome, those Maori plan outcomes. And
Through the chair, in regards to the Māori responsiveness framework, as it is a tool that's used by council to inform the way that we partner and collaborate with Māori, it's seen as needs to be taken a bit of a different approach in terms of how we present it in this report, and we're currently looking into some alternative ways to illustrate how that framework is being integrated through the other items on the program.
yeah, Chair, because I think I'd really find it helpful to understand how these strategies and processes do affect our Māori outcomes and contribute to that Auckland point of difference as in the Auckland plan. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add then an example that Mr. Wilcox might be referring to is if you look on page 41, which is attachment B, there you'll see Environmental Strategic Action Plan as one of the action plans. We see that as directly aligned to the Responsiveness to Maori program that we're doing in Council on Maori cultural well-being, because the issues around the natural environment are directly connected to Maori cultural well-being issues. So in our work we're doing on Maori cultural well-being, this Environmental Strategic Action Plan directly links into that.
Yeah, Chair, and look, I have no doubt that we're doing it, but I just want to see it in a way I can digest it.
Yes,
Thank
sure.
you.
Councillor Casey?
Thanks very much for this. It's very clear now how we are doing as the parent. What worries me is the CCOs and their strategies, and one came up the other day that we had a discussion around, and that was the stadium strategy. So we have a stadium strategy which was developed by a CCO, and we're saying, we'd kind of like to revisit that, review it, see how it's going, but we don't have a similar table for, I'm not aware of any other strategies that CCOs might be hatching. But I do know that one's there and we have a view on it. So how do we deal with CCOs? I thought the parent developed strategies and the CCOs then implemented them.
Well, that's generally the approach, although there are cases such as you quote of the stadium strategy, which has been developed by RFA, and you have the CCO monitoring committee, which I think is the appropriate body to be reviewing things like that come up through the CCOs.
Which we do.
Yeah. So.
Which was a directive of I think the governing body that passed to the Regional Facilities Auckland the requirement to look at how they could rationalise the facilities, and that's how they took up that process. I mean, it's not as if they've done it in isolation, because we've had a number of meetings now with Regional Facilities Auckland, and I think we've had quite an influence in directing them as to how they fulfil their obligations that we've given them there. That's the way I see it.
I suppose it's just the report back process for, if that's the only strategy that's out there, the report back process for that in terms of review. Do we as the governing body or the committee review it, or does the CCO board review it and then get back to us? It's an iterative process.
Well, it's called a strategy, but it's probably it's a plan of action, isn't it? Really, now that they're trying to implement what we've kind of requested they do.
That's right. Yep.
So, I mean, that may be something. I mean, I think they'll be coming back to us in the future to talk about, and they have been to us on a number of occasions, haven't they? In the last term of council, and now this term, I think we've talked to them on the plan that they've come up with. So, yeah. Thank you. You have another question, Councillor Casey?
No, this is great.
Thank you. Everybody seems to... Any other comments on the format? Councillor Cashmore?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, excellent. I love management by timelines. It sort of gives you a clarity that you can measure things against. and this is probably reflecting my lack of experience in this democratic process, but the identification of the risks around that potentially can affect the timeline or the management process, those risks are things that we can't control or we don't know about yet. Has there been some analysis around that?
So also, maybe I could help that. All of these projects have their own, risk management element to the overall project plan. So, we have a basic project plan that we do for all of these projects. Part of that is identifying the risks associated with it, which could include things like delays in time or budget or
statutes passed.
Yeah, that's right. So all of that is part of the project management of all of these processes.
Okay, thank you for that clarity, Roger.
Right, thank you. Well, if there's no other questions or feedback, I will move the recommendation, and
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Webster. This will be coming back, what, in 3 times a year. So we'll look forward in 4 months' time to the next update. But obviously, if councillors have got any issues or matters they wish to raise, they can come and approach you direct or to get some understanding of any of the issues in the document. So seconded by Councillor Webster. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we go to the item 12, which is the technical publications from the Research and Evaluation Unit, REMU. And you're certainly building up a good catalogue of work. So I'll ask you to present Tony Edhouse and Regan Solomon. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, councillors, and through the chair. So my name is Tony Edhouse, and I'm a researcher in the Research and Evaluation Unit. And with me here is the manager of that unit, Regan Solomon. So the report is fairly much self-explanatory, so I don't have a great deal to say, except just to remind councillors that our unit does a wide range of technical publications, and the aim is to publicise our research, put forward evidence related to council policies, and it informs new policy making. And also there are reports related to our statutory reporting obligations. And it relates a lot to the previous item that you've just been talking about in terms of where research programs come from, related to the Auckland Plan, the Economic Development Strategy, and other important strategic and planning documents. So we can help with some questions, but probably not detailed information from the reports. So
is it becoming a source of people coming to you to get? Is that becoming more regular now? That updates on information as to sourcing out these reports?
In terms of public access?
Yes, public access.
Well, yes, they're a very popular resource in terms of the information that we provide on the council websites and our normal publishing programs. So yes, they create quite a lot of interest.
Excellent. Because I think in the past, with the 8 councils before this council came together, there was a lot of stuff in repositories right across Auckland, but now we've got that ability to put it in the one central location, and it's obviously very well researched and well compiled information. So I think it'll be a good base for the future. So any questions?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add to that. Yes, so I just endorse what the Chair's just said. In fact, I've had several comments from central government agencies that our research capacity in Auckland Council is better than anything government's got. So, and we're working together closely with government in terms of the sharing of research information, which can benefit Auckland as well as the country. So, I think it's a very valuable capacity to have this quality of research.
Councillor, I've got Councillor Quacks, Webster, Holst, Mr Wilcox. So, Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, look, I'm just really impressed by the amount of research that goes on and the good work that you guys are doing. I noticed that the State of the Auckland report card is online. Is everything else online as well? Because there's no link. Doesn't appear to be a link to any of these. Are they online?
Yes, through the Chair, all the reports mentioned in this summary report are available on the Council website on a specific technical reports and research page, so they're all there.
Okay, so you actually have a page dedicated to the research that your group does?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well that's great, because I think there's some, clearly some very good work, and congratulations on what the work that you guys are doing. It's great.
Councillor Webster?
Yes, thank you very much, and I agree. It's very, very good to have all this monitoring and research. I do have to ask you though, I mean, we had a few issues last year with the figures you were using for Rodney. Has that been sorted out? I think you were about 5 years behind.
Through the Chair, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I have the knowledge of what.
Well, maybe you could get back to me. They were using figures that were very old, and it was affecting a lot of the infrastructure planning that was going on, particularly in the, well, yeah, actually in the whole of Rodney.
So perhaps I could help, Mr Chairman. Yes, so we took an action to follow up on the point that Councillor Webster's raising. It's in relation to transport issues and projections of transport usage and how that's impacting on planning for Rodney district area. So let's do an update memo for councillors.
I just want to make sure we're using up-to-date figures, Roger, because it really impacts on what happens. And we were using very old figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holst.
Thank you. I'm happy to move the recommendation, Mr Chair, and just make a comment and having a look at a couple of the pieces of research around particularly retrofit your home and the housing market. I think it's really good for us to remember that when information comes to us as part of our council reports and we're asked to make decisions, that our reports are written with a very, very good and sound research base behind them that is conducted by expert researchers with no political bias. And I think sometimes around the council table we're inclined to forget that the information that comes to us is robust, and I think it's good to remember and, you know, kind of keep a little note in our head of the work that REMU does and the huge breadth of work that they do and the fact that they're nationally respected for the standard of their research. We're not experts in this area. We may be experts in specific areas, but we have a fantastic range of experts in REMU, and I commend their work, and I hope that people have read that for each dollar that goes into retrofit your home, it returns $3.10 of social, environmental and economic value. Couldn't help but just make the opportunity to mention that.
Thank you.
Good work.
Mr Wilcox.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, the research, the Maori impact statement says that you work with Te Waka Angamua. Can you give me an example of how this has been productive?
Through the Chair, so we have one research project underway at the moment looking at ecological restoration around Bastion Point, and I think, I don't know the details of that, but that there has been some discussions with Te Waka on either its design and or its implementation, but I can give you more information on the detail of that particular project.
Are there any others? That's one example. Or perhaps offline you can...
Well, I think Mr Wilcox is asking what involvement Te Waka Angamua have in relation to all the projects that, you know, in designing the projects and kind of the specifications of the projects.
Through the Chair, so our process will vary depending on what the research question is. So the Bastion Point example is one that's kind of been done in collaboration in terms of the design and what the questions are, and we're also, the unit is currently developing a Māori responsiveness plan and working with Te Waka to think about our processes for our research design and the research that we do to take a two-world view approach, you know, where it's appropriate and things like that. So I can give you an update on some more depth to the work that we're doing and a bit of an overview of the process that we've got planned, if that helps.
Councillor Darby?
Thank you, and thanks, team. It is great to have this data come through because we make decisions on data, and then we need to look at the holes in the data, the questions that we're not asking, and I'm sure the team are always working that one up. And for me, it is an acute measure of our success and failure in certain areas. That is, but only the areas that we're measuring and surveying. And we will discover over time that there's areas that we're not capturing, and I'm sure the team has got its eyes on that. So there's, you know, some data is glowing and some data is embarrassing, and that's the truth of what's in here, and that's all good. For me, I'm fascinated by how international agencies that measure us, like Mercer and the what's the other one? The Economist Intelligence Unit, and there are some others. There's probably about
Monocle magazine.
4 or 5. Thanks, Dr. Blakely. How do they read us? And I'm just wondering if they ever come to you, or do they ever come to this council to find out how we say we are going? And it intrigued me that Mercer have just come out and placed us 3 or 4 in the world. But a week before, the Economist Intelligence Unit didn't rate us in the top 10. It didn't even rate us in the top 10 safest cities. So I'm just wondering how they do measure that. Do they come to us, or Dr. Blakely, you might like to add, and do they survey the whole of Auckland, or are they surveying the city centre of Auckland? Because my experience of Vancouver is it's great at its core like Auckland is, but if you go to the suburbs of Vancouver, it's just like so many other cities, it's desperate.
Well, if you take the Mercer survey, which is the one that the result just came out yesterday, I think, that we again rated 3rd in the world. That was developed as a survey for HR companies who are looking at what are the places around the world that are most attractive in terms of people wanting to locate and work in. If you go into Google, you can go into Mercer and you'll see the criteria that they evaluate us against. And so I know what they do is they do look at our website in terms of extracting data from that, and they look at other sources of information about Auckland in terms of doing their evaluation of how we rate, as do the Economist Intelligence Unit and Monocle, and there's about 20 other of these surveys around as well.
Are they measuring the whole of Auckland, or are they measuring the city centre?
They'll be measuring the whole of Auckland.
Thank you. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah. Just following up from Councillor Darby's question, I think he's are your reports peer-reviewed, or are some of them peer-reviewed and others not peer-reviewed, or because I note with Councillor the question that was also asked by Councillor Webster, where it appeared there might have been some data missing or out of date, and so that's the question around whether or not this research is peer-reviewed.
Yes, through the chair, we have a peer review panel which serves exactly that purpose. All our technical publications come before that panel, and formal peer reviews are initiated. So they're not, the technical reports are not published until the peer review is complete.
Okay. And so you would then have specialist peer review groups for the different areas of research, whether it be housing, the capacity supply for housing, or pollution in the Gulf, or whatever. So
yes, that's correct. The panel commissions both internal experts and external experts to review our technical reports.
Right. Thank you. And those are and comments by those groups are published as well?
No, the peer review operates in a kind of a convention of anonymous and confidential review.
Right. Okay.
But we keep detailed records, of course.
Yeah. And that guides your publications that guides your publications as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
So, with no other questions, I'll therefore, Councillor Holst, Deputy Mayor's moved the recommendation. I have a seconder.
I'll second it.
Councillor and I.
Oh, sorry.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. Thanks very much. Much appreciated. And I think our final item is number 13. This is just to retrospectively approve this. It's moved by Councillor Webster, seconded by Mr. Wilcox. Seconded by, is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Penrose. Mr. Wilcox.
Through your chair, where's the mihi?
The mihi? Did we have a mihi? Did we have a mihi on this submission?
Through the chair, no, we didn't.
Can I ask then, was that because of lack of time?
Yep.
So can I respond, tēnā koutou is good enough?
Tēnā koutou.
Certainly, we'll certainly keep that in mind for the future.
Okay. We've obviously also appeared and spoken to the select committee by teleconference, and I think we got a very good hearing, and we didn't get any questions, so it was quite it must have been a good hearing. So, and it was actually reported well in the dialogue that comes back from select committees, wasn't it? That the Auckland councils thing. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think it's a good submission, and I agree that in terms of voluntary organisations, it's tough to have to be paying, but I think it's kind of ironic that all the stuff about public good, and we charge huge amounts of money, which is cost recovery, to do road closures for the public good, and we charge that to community organisations and other people that do events. So it's a bit rich really coming from us, is all I can say, because we cover our costs, but we don't want anybody else to recover theirs. So I just kind of think it's a bit funny really, but
well, I think
it's interesting. I get
some of that's been foisted upon us by the health and safety requirements.
No, but
and also, if you go to policing,
absolutely.
The point that we made to the select committee was the last thing we want to see is Christmas parades. The police say, "Oh, we want X number of $1,000 for policing services."
Oh, I understand that. I understand that completely. But we charge for community events too. To community commercial and community, we do it, but we're telling another kind of public good agency not to do it. So I just find it kind of funny because we wouldn't impose that on ourselves.
Have you got?
So, yeah.
Okay. A comment. Any other questions? Okay. Councillor Casey. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand timeframes were a bit tight and it's all done and dusted, but as chair of the Community Development and Safety Committee, I'd like to have input into this, and I've got a couple of comments where I would have beefed it up a bit. And first of all, where it says we vet employees and volunteers, we also vet panel members and directors of our CCOs. So it's actually more wide-ranging than that, and that's quite critical as well. And one of the worries I have, it's not just policing at events, it's also policing of our bylaws. The police could just start saying, no, we don't actually need to do this, especially liquor bans. And I don't know if you did say that, George, in your dialogue with them, but I would certainly have strengthened it there. But apart from that, I agree with it totally, but don't leave me out the next time.
All right, don't leave you out, Councillor. Yes, yep. We'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was one of those ones that was on a very tight time frame, so that was the problem. We'll put a mihi in next time, so there's some learnings that have come out of this, and we'll keep them in mind.
Some lessons. No such thing as learning.
Oh, sorry, lessons.
Lessons.
I apologise.
I hate that word.
So I'll move. The motion's been moved, seconded by Councillor Webster and Penrose. Sorry, Councillor Webster moved, seconded by Councillor Penrose. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Declare that carried. And there's no other business, so I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Whoa.
Haven't we got something at 1 o'clock?
There's lunch, but I don't think it's there until midday.
Well, I've always told people. Excuse me, you've got the police at 1 o'clock? Yeah.